following presentation includes President Stenger and geography faculty and staff, as well as geography graduate students who are the researchers in this. Most residents in Johnson City thinks of Johnson City of two areas. One is the north side, and the other, of course, is the south side. The north side is where Oakdale Mall was created, but it's also the newest and most expensive houses, so residents in that section. The south side, of course, is older housing, and also Main Street, which has gone through a lot of trouble. So what we're going to do is point out that we are looking in the study area is in the south side, but on the north side of the south side, to make it a little confusion, I guess, it is an area that is just north of, for example, the Victory Building. And as you go down to the I-86 or Route 17, that has a residential area. It also has the annex for the library owned by BU. So that is in an area, it is the north side of the south side. And that is why our students labeled what we're going to study there as the north side of the I District area.
Thank you everyone for coming. My name is Shauna Stevenson, and we're going to introduce the project here. Northside Johnson City, it's a quiet West Belt neighborhood with downtown revitalization initiatives, and as Shauna was saying, Census Tract 138 on Route 2. So we spent a lot of the last semester going into the field, specifically into this neighborhood in Johnson City, and with that we also looked into the history. So I wanted to start with some characteristics here. This is right north of the central Johnson City area. It's surrounded by New York 17 and Harriel Drive to its north, and it also has a rail line going through it to its south. It's really close to Walmart, and it's close to the Oakdale Commons, which is currently developing. I have this picture here. This is just a historical, it's a front to a magazine that EJ Factory used to put out for its workers. It's a circulation here, and that was really where a lot of this community was developed, was through this shoe factory. And here's a historical aerial overview of the area, and it's between 1973 to the left and 2018 to the right. And I highlighted the main roads here. CFJ Boulevard is here, Lester Avenue is here, Main Street's down here, and then this is the highway. And as you'll learn about, we have CFJ Park here in this area. This is the annex. This is Walmart. We know the Victory Lofts are here, and through our research we learned that this area used to have something called the Scout Factory, which we'll hear more about in the presentation. And as you can see, most of the neighborhoods stayed the same, except for these economic developments here, which we'll learn more about later in the presentation. Additionally, I wanted to show that historically this was a very ethnically diverse area because of the employment there at the factory. We had a lot of Eastern Europeans here. And most of the residences are single-family homes and multi-unit apartments. The Victory Building is being developed to house dozens of new apartments, and it's going to have some commercial development as well. I'll let Gina talk about the demographic overview.
Okay, so I'll be taking you through a demographic overview just to better understand what this study area looks like now and the needs of the people who live there right now. So we tracked various ethnic populations from 2010 to 2020. We started with non-Latin white population. We also tracked Black and African Americans, Asian population, and the Latin population. And this is a map showing a zoomed out image of the entire census tract and the overall ethnic makeup by block. So as you can see, this is also 2010 to 2020 comparison. So as you can see, the most substantial increase in population is that of the Latin community, mostly clustering alongside the Black community, following the same settlement patterns. They mostly settle within the outer regions of the census tract, and more specifically in the east and the south. The Black population has also surged very substantially, but clusters can be found around Group 86 right here. And the Asian population has also increased, a little bit less than the Black population, but most substantially along the easternmost region of the census tract. Now, age demographics. So more than half of the residents in the study area are over the age of 40. It is important that future development takes this into account so that this community caters to an aging demographic. Otherwise, nearly 20% of the population is under the age of 20, indicating a potential demand for recreational services and safe, walkable infrastructure. We also went through some economic indicators, and we compared, again, from 2010 to 2020. We also compared this census tract, the north side, to the southern census tract of 139. We looked at employment rates. This is for the southern tract. Also, average household income, again, 2010 to 2020. Poverty status. And in the end, we could conclude that this census tract is a lot more well off and financially stable, although both census tracts are seeing an increase in financial stability. Tract 138 is definitely doing a lot better, as you can see here. Both census tracts have almost half the families that are living under the poverty status. And now I'll give it back to Shauna to
So the
discuss.
percent is going down. Has the population stayed about the same?
The population has actually increased, which was kind of interesting. But I think that the reason for this, specifically 2020 with the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of families were seeking out just support from the government and things like that, and just seeking the help that they actually needed before this. So that obviously has a lot to do with kind of having that, because the unemployment rate did go up, which also makes sense with the COVID. Yeah.
Okay.
I will give it back to Sean.
Sure. And then we looked at safety and crime, and part of safety is walkability in these neighborhoods. As we'll see later in the presentation, there's a need for more sidewalks and pedestrian safety. As far as crime is concerned with the north side of Johnson City, it's a relatively quiet neighborhood, as we've seen from records of calls. So the following map illustrates calls in the past 5 years to the police station since 2018. And there's an emphasis here that you'll see it kind of stays the same over the years, and that is where Walmart is. And according to the records, a lot of that's just larceny, and that accounts for a majority of the calls in a lot of the cases here. You'll also see some clusters of calls here, a lot of it's traffic violations and other common crime types. And just to summarize, it's a history of factory industry with cultural roots. Now mostly hosts residential homes, has easy access to the highways and Oakville Commons. And with a growing minority population, the area can be generalized as a majority white elderly region with an improving financial standing. And I'd like to invite Arjun and Brian to come up and talk about residential characteristics.
Thank you, Swana. I am Arjun Lansani, and my friend Brian Katsala is going to present the residential characteristic. Here is the drone footage of northern side of Johnson City. And coming to the introduction section for the future investment and development in the community, residential characteristic play the vital role. Certain quality in the neighborhood often help to predict community sentiment and response to the development. And also major theme that have been outlined in the study area are the stake in the community property condition throughout the study area and the area dependency on the that stake in the community. As in the figure, you can see that mostly this area is covered with residential characteristic, and only 9 are multi-residential, meaning the majority are single family homes, and these are the pocket of industrial land use. However, the commercial parcel are deceivingly large. And coming to the residential status in the study area, mostly these are owner and less are renter. The rental property are mostly reserved to apartment and multi-residential buildings. Many are concerned in the pocket along the North Road Street. Owner tend to be hear more about the community in which they live because they consider this building as their homes rather than the houses. As a result, this resident will have a great interest in further investment in this community. coming to the locality, to the Broome County, mostly these are local to the Broome County, meaning, and also the local owner tend to have greater stake in the community compared to those who rarely visit in the study area. Local will be more concerned with the personal impact of future development and investment because it affects them directly. On coming to the household type in the neighborhood, around 66% of the residential property in the study area are considered family household, meaning their residents are directly connected with the family members, and around 33% are non-family household. Family household have greater interest in the community because they are likely concerned with the green space for children, accessibility for working population, and a recreational place for the seniors. Family will have great interest in future investment in this area, and the development should be created to meet all the generation need in the future. Now Ryan will continue the household tenure in the study.
Thank you. So Arjun has highlighted some of the key points that help to define this area as an established residential community, and that's supported even further when we take a look here at housing tenure. In the last 15 years or so, just about half of the homes have gone up for sale. We have some homeowners who have been around for decades. It becomes even more interesting when we take a look here at the most recent sale dollar for a lot of these homes that have been selling recently. We see unrealistically low amounts, like a couple dollars or a couple grand. And what that tells us is it's very likely a lot of these homes are just being passed down amongst families. And that's, while we do have a rather high turnover rate in the last decade or so, that doesn't necessarily translate to new people or new families moving into the community. So we've established that the owners here do have a large stake in the community. They own their homes, they've been around for a while, most of them have families, and that certainly shows in how they keep their homes. They're well maintained and presentable. Most have large backyards with big permanent structures like garages and sheds and above ground pools. We notice most don't even bother to put up high privacy fences so they can look right out into their neighbor's yard. And we feel this really speaks to the neighborly aspect and the sense of community found in this neighborhood. We did notice during field work, however, that North Broad Street here seems to act like a dividing line within the community. And once you go west of North Broad Street, as you can see, the property conditions seem to deteriorate rather quickly. Another thing we noticed while walking around is that regardless of where we were in the study area, most, if not all, of the multi-residential and the apartment buildings were in much poorer shape than the single-family homes. Along Pratt Avenue, we also discovered this stretch of old Endicott Johnson homes, which date back to the early 20th century. As you can see, they're all pretty much identical in architecture and style. There have been very few modifications made over the last century. We feel these are really symbolic of the continuity of this community. To wrap up, this neighborhood is also very car dependent. It's a working class community. Most people are commuting anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes a day. Almost nobody is using public transportation, and most homes actually have anywhere from 2 to even 4 cars available to them. So seeing this along with the demographic information which was presented earlier, you start to see that this neighborhood is definitely a bit wealthier than the other surrounding Southside communities of Johnson City, and they don't rely nearly as much on public transportation as some more minority and lower income communities usually do. We're now going to pass it over to Corey and Shahadat. We're going to talk about why public transportation infrastructure really isn't supported in this community.
Thank you, Arjun and Ryan, for the presentation on residential characteristics. Now I will start discuss over the infrastructures. Since the last century, second half, quality of life emerged as a very important aspect in the public policy, and quality of life is directly related to infrastructure. So, infrastructure can be 3 types, but in our today's presentation, we will focus only on transportation infrastructure. And in transportation infrastructure, we will cover walkability, bus routes, and other aspects. First of all, to define walkability, we can define walkability with two different sets of themes. The first one is concerned with the total walkable environment in the neighborhood, and the second is concerned with the transportation sustainability options and physical facilities endorsing. Okay. So combining these, we can understand the condition of a walkability in a neighborhood. If we look into our study area, so we can see that walkability is not in a very good condition, lack of sidewalks, lack of crosswalks, and the lack of commercial places that gathers people did not make the community very much walkable. And if we look about the connections with the area, it's not very far from the main street, and here we have developed a quarter-mile buffer from the main street, and we see that most of the area is within the quarter-mile from the main street. So it's very accessible, but the point is there are 4 entry and exit points. Among them, 2 are tunnels like this and 2 are bridges like this. So this condition does not make the community connectable by through walking with the main street and others. Now, if we talk about the bus routes, then we can say that bus connectivity is really good in Binghamton Tri-State area, and it is true even for our study area. Though there are no bus stops within the study area, but for both inbound and outbound bus, the stop is really near or within the walking distance from our study area. So that is the condition of bus routes. Now, Cody will discuss about roads and road conditions and others.
Okay, so now I'm going to get more into the physical infrastructure of the area. So first we're going to look at the road conditions, and basically the way I did it, we used Survey 123. We went around the area and collected our own data. So we have green being good roads, red being bad, and yellow being mediocre. The way I would define it is that good is you don't need to do anything to it. It's well paved, nothing, no problems at all. Yellow, if there's excess money, then I'd recommend repaving it. And red, you need to find the money to repave it. So looking here, we notice that there's a mix of everything. The bigger roads, we notice one with the most commercial properties tend to be red due to the increased traffic there. Basically, overall, it's hard to tell the infrastructure of the area due to being a mix of all kinds, good or bad. And then we did the same thing with the sidewalks, roads. But we added blue being one-sided. So again, we have green for good, yellow for mediocre, and red for not being there. And then again, blue one-sided. So again, the same result. There's a mix of everything, and it's hard to tell if it's good or bad infrastructure in the area due to that. Then we go to the crosswalks and the lighting, and several crosswalks in the area were in good condition, possessed operable crosswalk buttons, but within the neighborhood, crosswalks themselves were not usually in good condition, and in some cases there were no crosswalks at all. Missing crosswalks pose a huge danger to pedestrians, especially on bigger roads. So a few areas of the study area that we noticed needed crosswalks that were missing it were Arch Street and North Street where they merged, and Lester Avenue, as was one of the main roads in the area, and only had one crosswalk for the entire road. So here we have a picture of the Arch Street and Broad Street merger, and we notice that there is no crosswalks at all in the area. And to cross without jaywalking, you need it's a whole way to get around. It probably adds about 5 minutes to your journey. So in terms of streetlights, we notice that there's adequate streetlights throughout, but we only studied the area during the day, so we were unable to tell if they were working or not, so we can't really give any opinion on how good they are. So now we're going to pass it to the commercial characteristics with Chris and Daniel. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris Jankus and I'm joined here with Dan Gross. Together we worked on the commercial characteristics for our study area, and I'm going to begin by showing us a land use map. Now, here we go. We've already seen the residential, and that is highlighted here in yellow. But what we're interested in for this section is the red, which is commercial properties. And we can see that most commercial properties are located along the southern edge of our study area. This is likely due to the railroad that goes through here and is where the center of industry and commercial was historically. Moving down, the first thing that Dan and I really wanted to look at was local and non-local ownership. Local business owners have a tendency to have a much greater stake in their community than non-local owners. And what we found was kind of surprising. Highlighted here in dark green are the local business owners, and the only non-local owner we had really was Walmart. Almost everyone else who has businesses in this area is a local owner that lives within Boone County or even Johnson City. And then we took a closer look at the current businesses. And there's not actually a lot of commercial in our study area. There are only 12 different properties. And we can see from some of them, like this Can Man Redemption Center, that a lot of them have former industrial purposes or service something like the For Sale Scout lot, which only really handles trucking and logistics at the moment. In terms of services for residents, there are 4 restaurants, and they are all bars and taverns, which we are scrolling through right now. And in general, a lot of the commercial here doesn't really fulfill services outside of that. If you wanted to buy clothing or any other kind of retail, your only option is going to be Walmart. And the same is true for groceries, if you wanted to find any kind of groceries. And then here we also have a cluster map, and this basically shows owners of multiple parcels in our study area. Dark red is the village of Johnson City itself, and CFJ Park is obviously their largest parcel. And in light red up here is the Johnson City Senior Center. But we see a cluster of businesses around Dement and Pratt Avenue. And those are Broad Street Enterprises and Equity Ventures, which are both landlords who own multiple parking lots and properties. And then finally in blue here is Speedy's LLC, who does those sauces that you can find in the grocery store. And now I'm going to hand it off to Dan to talk about vacancies in the area.
Thanks, Chris. So the last thing that me and Chris really wanted to look at was kind of considering the vacancies of commercial properties. Given that this neighborhood is kind of, a long-standing community, especially in terms of residential, we wanted to see whether that would be reflected in commercial. So as kind of shown in the map, we kind of seen that despite kind of the mixed nature of business here, that a majority of the commercial occupied spaces are occupied. The only few vacancies really existing were a few grass lots that are either zones or used land use for commercial. And of course, the last major thing we kind of wanted to mention was our really big that Scout lot, which is a huge parcel for sale that's currently kind of just being used for trucking at the moment. So with all this in mind, considering the mixed nature of the commercial development and kind of what's there, it's not necessarily that it's pretty clear that this neighborhood is kind of a bigger need for not only given opportunities, but also a bit of insufficient services that can better meet the needs of the community that are currently there. So, for example, one of the first things we kind of brought up was the idea of recreational facilities. Although CFJ Park is currently a massive, plot of land and massive opportunity in this study area, we noticed that a lot of the facilities have been a little bit feeling a lot of wear and tear. They haven't really been maintained to the certain extent of what you might expect. In addition to this, given that the winter here is brutal, there's not really a lot of wintertime activities, so residents aren't really left with many options to go out and do a little bit more of what might be available. Furthermore, we kind of again bring back in the idea that a majority of our restaurant and dining service is dominated by bars. Although this is really good for older populations and adults and for socializing, it doesn't really mean a lot to the family aspect, especially given that this neighborhood is very dense, concentrated with an older population, a family-based neighborhood. It doesn't really speak to the nature of what's really there. So developing more things as like small businesses, or that might, not only expand the opportunity, but also support the diverse group that's coming in, is another growing opportunity here. And the last thing we kind of really were pointing out was obviously local retail. Of course, as we mentioned, Walmart's really kind of that dominating force here in terms of retail development, which although it's good for providing a wide range of things, it doesn't really stem directly into the local economy, or bring so much, that sense of community or sense of identity that things may be really looking for. So kind of bring that all together, we kind of then get to the real final cornerstone of this whole project, and what we're really trying to emphasize going forward. So then I would like to bring Chris back up to introduce our final story map about the future of Johnson City.
All right, thank you, Dan. And we're going to go over 2 proposals here. I'm going to start by introducing what we did this semester a little bit. And we spent the last couple of months doing a culmination of field work, of analysis of both census and parcel data. Right here we have some pictures of the tour that we were given of the annex a couple weeks ago, which was very valuable in understanding the character of our area a little bit better. And what we really found was that this study area is stagnant, for lack of a better word. It's an aging population. There are limited commercial opportunities and services locally available. And in general, we really see an issue, especially with the highways and railroads hemming in this neighborhood. But on the other hand, we see a lot of opportunity for growth and development. Recent investments into healthcare by UHS Wilson and education by Binghamton University in Johnson City have brought new residents, new workers, and new students to the area. And there aren't a lot of uses that actually bring these people together. So we really see a formalized town and gown relationship where the university students and local residents can interact in a seamless manner. And with that in mind, we had two proposals in mind that bridge the community of students, residents, and even further the residents of the greater Broome County. And those two proposals are going to be highlighted here on this study area map. There we go. We have Binghamton Annex highlighted here in dark green, and the previously mentioned Scout Lot highlighted in blue. So I would like to invite Ryan, Dunia, and Shahab to talk about the park proposal.
So as Chris has mentioned, we've identified 99 to 101 Leicester Avenue as an ideal space for one of our two proposals. And we're trying to tie our proposal in with the history of the location, so we thought it'd be helpful to provide a brief background. We discovered that for most of the early to mid 20th century, there was a building on this site called New Scout, and due to its close proximity to the rail line here, and the fact that it's in the shadows of the Victory factory, really suggests that it was likely one of the many industrial factories within the region. Through historic aerial photographs, we found that at some point between the 1970s and 80s, the New Scout factory was closed and demolished. The last photograph to show it standing was taken in 1973. And you can see over the next 40 years here, we've had a number of structures go up and then demolished on site.
As Ryan said, that this area is a space for opportunity. We took this opportunity to give some idea and a proposal how we can convert this area. So, in our idea, what we mainly focus is that we wanted to be cost effective. That's why we did not propose any demolishing any structure. Rather, we want to convert it to a new use. So, for this first structure, we propose a pavilion, open pavilion for all season, especially for summer. It can be a roller skater rink, and for the winter it can be a ice skating rink. And for the other structure, we propose a mixed-use development here with multi-story. In the ground level, we propose a farmers market, and at the upper level, we propose affordable housing. So now, Dunia will discuss why we thought like that for this area and how this can be implicable and necessary for this study area.
Okay, so we felt that this proposal has the greatest potential to kind of bridge the gap between the community that is already established here and students and faculty alike. So the green space was designed with the aging population nearby in mind, as well as the many families who live here. So as you can see, this walking track connects directly into the sidewalk on CFJ. And the pavilion and skating rink would be the first one established in Johnson City, with the exception of the carousel at the park across the street. There aren't really many recreational activities for children and families, and even the students who live there right now. The second structure, located behind the first one, which you can see right here, would be the mixed-use structure. So the bottom floor would be a farmer's market, which would be extremely beneficial to the community who live here right now, especially that of the south side. Now, as Chris has said, many people's only option is Walmart for food, and especially with the recent closing of the Save Lot on Main Street, this area is essentially rendered a food desert. And the top floor would be residential, more specifically affordable housing, which would also be extremely beneficial to the community here. With the trend of gentrification and the rise of student housing, a lot of the people who live here are really struggling to find adequate and affordable housing, and we feel that this would remedy that. We have also identified through fieldwork the local residents are not able to easily walk to other services across Johnson City, and this would be easily accessible even to students, as the new Main Street bus line that is student-run will go directly from campus and drop you off right on Leicester Avenue and Main Street. Our second proposal also fulfills the same goal of bridging the gap between each community and will be discussed further by Corey, Shauna, and Arjun.
So what we're proposing is using the library annex, we're going to repurpose it to something more community oriented. So to start, I'm going to get a little into the history of the site, and then we'll go into the proposal. So the building located on the site today was first constructed in 2006 and served as the Press and Sun Bulletin's printing facility up until 2018. And in 2020 it was bought by Binghamton University. They've maintained the facility ever since. Sitting in the northeastern corner of our study area, the 97,000 square foot building is the only property currently on the area owned by the university. And a portion of the building currently is being transformed into the library annex and is set to house hundreds of thousands of books and archives. The structure's even concrete floors and high ceilings are ideal for storage purposes, and the remaining space currently is unused, and the large open warehouse room on the building's southern side has been identified as an ideal space for developing community-oriented attraction. And now Arjun will present the community-oriented attraction.
Thank you, Corey. Here we propose the annex public market. A large warehouse-type room on the south end of the annex building has been identified as an ideal space for creation of the cultural marketplace. The large open space can be easily subdivided into individual stalls that could serve as a pop-up vendor location for regional business and restaurants, while still providing enough room for central core area to eat and interact. The loading bay doors that were once used to send newspaper out would now help to bring locally made food and goods in. There is the stall around here, and also there is a live music spot around the stall area. The lot has plenty of existing parking, meaning it could handle both stock, truck traffic and support the increased volume of car that would occur as the location became an attractive regional destination. There is also a large green space on the western side of the building which could support an outdoor pavilion which would encourage indoor and outdoor eating and interaction in this area. Highlighting the rich history of the area diversity, this stall will be geared towards local ethnic restaurants and businesses. This business will encourage to display the flag of their country or region, which would incite visitors to try to the taste of Johnson City. A dedicated commercial kitchen space could be constructed to hold a cooking lesson for the community. People of all ages will be encouraged to here to learn how to cook different ethnic cuisine in this area. The spacious hall could also serve as a space for social gathering among the students and locals alike, and also equipped with the stage of live music performance. Events can be held that would foster a sense of community and belonging among the Johnson City, and new professional students that would create an additional incentive those who travel in this marketplace. So, inspiring project across the nation will continue by Sana.
Alright, so we know it's a big ask for a multi-generational, multicultural space in the annex, but we actually found a lot of places in the United States that developed in the last couple of decades that really exemplify what this could look like in our community. And the first one I'd like to go over is Salt City Market in Syracuse, New York. It opened in 2021. I was actually attending Syracuse University at the time, and I saw how much excitement this community had watching this develop. I'm just going to look at their website really quick so you can see. This was years in the making, of course, and it had a lot of support financially from local community institutions, and they did a lot of work meeting with the community and getting to know their needs. But this has been very successful. It's very beautiful. If you haven't seen it already, I highly recommend it. I'm just gonna And besides Syracuse, the downtown Bazaar in Buffalo, New York, that services a mostly black neighborhood that was developed by church community members actually and as an economic initiative to help black business owners find a place where they could sell objects, and they could also have food and restaurants. Reading Terminal Market in Philadelphia, that was established in the late 1800s. It's still going strong today. Midtown Global Market in Minneapolis, Minnesota, opened in 2006. Over 40 businesses and 22 cultures are represented here. La Cocina in San Francisco, that was helping local residents who were economically disadvantaged find a place where they could start their businesses. They were already selling food out of their homes, and just provided a place for them to do this in a way that could be financially feasible. And as you'll see too from these pictures, a lot of them have this like industrial big warehouse space too. So it really is a good spot in the annex where something like this could be possible. And finally, didn't want to leave out historically, we discovered that there is a market called the John S. Patterson Market. And after reviewing aerial images of the area, we determined that this is probably where the Walmart is now. And this was something that was built for the workers of the EJ Shoe Factory. And it was very busy, and it had many stalls of fresh produce and places where people could buy things locally. And then I'll bring Dan back up for the site plan accessibility.
Alright. Hey guys. So, as the very final piece to this, obviously, we brought up that question earlier about accessibility, right? A lot of these neighborhoods are kind of experiencing a bit of issues in terms of some of the road conditions, sidewalk conditions, and that kind of brings up how can this really connect the community. Fortunately enough, however, we also have to point out that Johnson City has recently received a huge revitalization initiative in which infrastructure and road connections is something that they're looking to go into. So, with that in mind, we kind of wanted to highlight a couple of the ways in which locals can really access this area. So, of course, beginning with the north side access point, obviously in terms of the walkability, it's pretty much right next to a majority of this neighborhood. Lester Avenue goes right down the middle and has a bunch of crosswalks available. They'll need a little bit of work that are there, but so they can either access both the Scout Hut or the Annex building, and in addition to the spaces that are currently in between them. Besides for the direct study area, however, we also wanted to bring in the question of students. Given that Binghamton usually pharmacy school is, towards the southern portion of the, downtown core, we wanted to see whether it can be walkable from students' perspectives. As highlighted on the map, it is also pretty much within, 5 to 10 minute walk between what Binghamton University students on our campus and these markets. And knowing how students are and how we tend to find the spaces, if things are there, students will usually find the time to make their way there. And again, right through that Main Street connection, even the idea, the highlight of the park that we're aiming to develop, that will further bring students easier access to Main Street and future development. And of course, finally, given that these proposals can be something that can be a bit of a regional economic attraction, we wanted to see how the regional access, so people can access the space. And given that New York 17 is almost exits are right next to it, if proper signage is there, anything that's available to residents, people driving by can stop and potentially use these spaces. We even highlight the idea of the Microtel Inn that's right next door, which is located again right off the highway and is easily walkable between the two spaces. That can again bring a more regional audience, maybe from Boone County or beyond, into this space. So with all that kind of in mind, the big thing we wanted to drive with this is that, Johnson City is something that's really been experiencing a lot of change over the last 5 to 10 years. With, this sudden transition of New York State's investments, in addition to these higher education, medical-based economy, understanding kind of the concerns and needs of local residents is kind of important, not only for form of sustainability that's, representative of what's there, but also that can further develop Johnson City's identity. Within the last 6 months, this team, we've had the opportunity of really going out there and trying to, understand a bit of one of Johnson City's kind of forgotten neighborhoods and kind of, extending that boundary of what we previously have known about this area. And with that in mind, we've not only been able to find something, some valuable things, but you propose potential ideas to spark conversations about going forward and maybe what the future of Johnson City could really look like. So I guess with that in mind, I do sincerely want to thank you all for coming today. Of course, President Sanger for giving us the time to be here, and for this class for everything we've been able to do together. And thank you.
So we're going to let the president here ask questions, make comments.
Sure. Sure. I like both proposals. They make a lot of sense. They are relatively simple to do. They don't require a lot of capital in order to make them happen. And their success doesn't have to be immediate. They can kind of build their momentum with time, as opposed to something like the Victory Building, where the building of that building is so contingent on filling those apartments for the finances necessary to pay the debt off. So I like the fact that they're slow developing projects that could take multiple years before they actually percent. We have not spent much. That's why I'm glad you did this, because we have not spent much time on this track, and it's going to be something that we're going to have to address sooner or later. Good. These are great ideas.